Any comments? Mrs. Falcon, do you have anything to address?
I do not have anything to address. I think we went through it in quite a bit of detail March 26th. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody had any.
Hearing none, we will move on to item B.
Mr. Mayor, it is a public hearing. We should probably open up the public hearing to the public if anybody wants to comment.
We want a motion or just have
Mr. Mayor, I think you can, on your own authority, simply open the hearing.
we'll open a hearing, a public hearing on the dog park at Riggle Park. Madam
Oh,
Clerk, do you
Are
have
we, I
any-
thought we were having the public hearing on the budget.
We just finished that.
Oh, okay.
Did you offer public comment for the public, the budget, Mr. Mayor?
No, okay, at this time, we'll ask for any comments in the public on the 2021 city budget.
There are two people in the public. I'll go ahead and unmute Mark. Mark, do you have any comment on the budget?
I do not.
Thank you. Denise, do you have any public comment on the budget?
I do not.
Thank you. There is no one else in the public for the budget public hearing.
Okay, any comments from the council at this time on the budget? Okay, I guess then moving on to the next public hearing for the dog park at Regal Park. Mr. Womack.
Do we have to close this public hearing first?
We're still in it. What would you like to say, Mrs. Johnson?
You can close the public hearing on your authority, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
For the budget, an open public hearing for the dog park. I may have missed it also.
Well, I think the mayor has the authority simply to close the public hearing on the budget if he sees nobody else willing to talk on it. So,
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to close the public hearing on the budget?
Close
Time,
public comment.
We can be put on budget at this time. Everyone else out?
Everyone all
Okay, moving on, we'll have a public hearing for the dog park at Regal Park at this time.
Madam Clerk, you had two subjects that did not speak, correct? Or is there anyone else out there that wishes to speak?
There is one person of the public that just joined us. Are you talking for the budget, Mr. Mayor, or the dog park?
The dog park.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go through the public comments for the dog park. Okay? Mark, do
Sure.
you have a public comment for the dog park?
I think it would be a draw to Cedar Springs. A lot of people love dog parks. It's a great idea. All for it.
Thank you. Denise, do you have any additional comment on the dog park?
Only that I agree. It is a thing that's been much needed in the area. There are, especially in my area, there is no place to walk your dog without being out on the road. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you're considering. Thank you.
Thank you. Last person, Bryn A., do you have a comment on the public hearing for the dog park?
No comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add some additional comments from the city. So the overwhelming opinion has been in support of the dog park. I do understand there's an individual here in City Hall right now who's opposed to it, and he's indicated that he has a neighbor who's also opposed to it. I have spoken to a few individuals who indicated that they would like to have their concerns addressed. Not that they were opposed to the park, but that they might have some concerns about the park. One of which was they were a little afraid of barking dogs being loud, obnoxious throughout their day. And of course, we can't prevent dogs from barking. That's, dogs do that. But all dog parks have signage up that indicates that dogs shall not excessively bark. I've been to a dozen dog parks, and yes, of course, dogs bark, they're playing, whatever. But the owners are generally very good about keeping their dogs from becoming a nuisance barking. And then another concern was that the hours of a dog park should be limited, which again, we wholeheartedly agree with. We don't want people there before sunrise. We don't want people there after dark. But I simply don't see the difference between children running around a park screaming and having a good time and some dogs barking, and that there will be people at the park, whether they're with their children or their dogs. Of course, one of the reasons that we considered Riggle Park instead of, say, North Park or Morley Park was that Riggle Park is an extremely underutilized park. I, as a city manager, travel throughout the city on a daily basis, and I virtually never see anybody at Riggle Park. Very, very few times. Morley Park is full of people on a regular basis. Of course, North Park never has anybody in it, but that's because it's more of a nature preserve park. So I believe the intent was to put it in Riggle Park, not only because it's underutilized, but also because the existing fence line that is there would save the city about $2,000 in the installation of the park there. So those are the reasons that we chose that park. And if the individual would like to speak more about his reasons for concern, maybe we could address those reasons instead of simply a blanket opposition to it.
Thank you. You're exactly right. That part's very underutilized, which is fine for us.
Your address?
That area. They're supposed to.
Yeah, your address and your name, through, sir, for the record.
147 South 7th Street.
Go ahead.
I agree that park is very underutilized, but living in the area, I have grandkids that go down there when they come over and whatever, and the traffic flow is gonna be increased tremendously. We just had a woman that asked that she would be, isn't even a resident here in Cedar, that would come and use the park and wouldn't have a problem paying for it. Now I gotta put up with all that traffic flow and all that noise. That's why I'm opposed. There's other places in the area that there's no neighborhood around. Like that the other park there. There's no houses very close to that park, so I just asked to look for another area.
Thank you for your comment. Ms. Johnson, is there any other public comments?
At this time, there is no one else waiting for public comment.
Okay, at this time, I would close the public hearing on the dog park at Riggle Park, unless there's some council members wish to address.
I have a specific question about the footprint of the park. I don't know if you want it here or if you want it in a different part of the agenda.
Repeat that, please.
I have a specific question about the footprint of the park. The outline of where the dog park will be in Riggle Park.
Mr.
Would you-
Womack.
Well, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, you are a member of the public, and of course, you can address your concerns right now if you'd like. But as a member of the council, you can also discuss those concerns as part of the action item, which is on the agenda.
And I'm asking where the mayor would prefer to have me have that conversation.
You can do it now, or you could do it at the time at the action item. Your choice.
My only, I don't know if it's a concern or would like some clarification. I was looking and I live kitty corner across from it. I'm thrilled with it. I think it will be excellent. I'm concerned that it looks like it's swallowing the basketball court. And I'm not quite sure, the park is quite large. And I'm not quite sure why we would take up, unless I'm not understanding it correctly when I'm looking at it. And are we looking at putting another basketball court? Is it not taking up the basketball court? I would like some clarification on that.
Sure.
Yes, I did put a rough map in the agenda packet, but you know, it's not an exact map. It's difficult sometimes to balance the desires for a larger park without perhaps taking out some of the park equipment that already exists. Now, I did put this in front of the public about 4 or 6 months ago with two possible plans, one a smaller dog park and one a larger dog park. And the majority of people wanted a larger dog park. And so the only way that I felt that we could accomplish that was to push it out to the west, which did encompass the current, I don't even know if it's a half court, the quarter court basketball net that is there. Now, council's aware that I had previously also asked the public whether they were interested in a full-size basketball court, which would be placed on the southern end of the Morley Park Skinner Field parking lot. But the price tag for that was approximately $30,000 to $40,000.
Right.
So we felt that with this being potentially $5,000 or less, that we would see about putting a dog park in now and address the basketball court situation later. There are some additional options which we could use to perhaps get grant money or crowdfunding money to put in a $30,000 to $40,000 dog park, I'm sorry, basketball court, which obviously would replace the very small basketball area that exists in Riggle Park. Also, there is no dog park in the city of Cedar Springs. There are multiple locations where people can play basketball, including the CTA school and the Cedar Springs public schools.
I just didn't know if there was a way we could adjust the footprint so we don't take out the basketball court.
Yes, we could, but again, obviously that reduces the size of the dog park. And frankly, I don't know if it's a good idea because to do it in that way, either significantly complicates the fence line. So instead of having one very long straight fence line, you're going to have a fence line that has multiple right angles, you know, and basically looking like it's trying to work around something because it is working around something. And additionally, people who might be playing basketball there are going to be bouncing balls around a 4-foot fence where a basketball could very easily bounce over the fence into the dog park area. And so now you have an intrusion of somebody who is trying to play basketball going into the dog park. And I felt it appropriate to have a separation distance
Sure.
between anyone who's playing in the Riggle Park on the normal children play structures. So they wouldn't be tempted to or be forced to get close to the fence line for the dogs.
Sure. But it's a big park. Like we could go to the whole other side. Is it just that we have to use that fence?
If you mean the fence line that already exists, it saves a significant amount of money.
Okay. So we're exchanging saving money by using that fence and eliminating the basketball court. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
My computer just keeps randomly muting me and I don't know why. You know, this was a result of administration working with staff to identify what would be an appropriate size and location for the dog park. If Madam Mayor Pro Tem feels like maybe she would like to form a subcommittee to develop a different strategy for where to place the fence line, that's perfectly fine by me.
I just know that the basketball court gets used. I mean, I live across the street.
No, okay,
and I would hate to see that go away if we don't have to.
okay. This is a public hearing. I don't know what else to say.
I mean, that's fine. And by the way, I'm totally supportive of the dog park. I was supportive of the dog park before I got a dog, and I now have a dog and would love to have the dog park. But I would like to see if there's a way we couldn't preserve the basketball court.
He's getting another computer. His keeps going offline.
Sure, that's fine. And I could type my comment if it's helpful.
Do any other counselors have any comments or concerns?
Should we wait till we go to the action item or?
Well, we can do that too.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay. Any other councils on Zoom wish to speak at this time, or do you want to wait until we go to the action item? Hearing no further comments, I will close the public hearing on the dog park. Moving on to item 5, adoption of the agenda as printed.
Mr. Mayor, I know the other council members can't hear me just yet. Maybe you could repeat what I have to say. But I do have some notes here that I would like to move the marijuana item to discussion.
Yep.
And I would like to add, I guess, a motion.
I'd like to add a motion to add the city manager authorization to approve of the drain easement over the fire station parking lot.
That would be B
as
then.
the action items.
Madam Clerk, did you hear all that?
Did you hear all that?
I caught most of it. Let me read it back to you. You'd like to add a motion to permit the city manager to authorize and approve the fire station drain easement.
That's fine, yes, thank you.
And remove B from action item down to discussion.
Okay.
Okay, so far we have moved action item B to discussion and added action item B for the manager for the drain across the fire department's parking lot. Any other discussions or changes or requests at this time? I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as reprinted.
I'll make that motion.
Second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve,
You're muted just then.
adopt the agenda, and you need a discussion before I do a roll call vote. Mrs. Atchison,
Yeah.
Mrs. Conley,
yes.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
Mrs. Nixon. I think online
Yes.
yet?
Hold on, somehow I'm, yes.
Great, good to hear from you. Mrs. Powell. Mrs. Race.
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes yes, the motion carries. Adoption of the agenda. Moving on to 6, the consent agenda. Any councilman wish to move or change or request information on any of the motions in the consent agenda at this time? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make that motion.
Or-
I would second.
It has been moved and seconded. Ms. Johnson, did you get those?
I have Mr. Gross as moving the motion and Ms. Nixon as seconded. Is that correct?
Thank you. Any comments or discussion before I call the roll? Mrs. Atkinson,
Yes.
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Groves,
Yes.
Mrs. Nixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Powell,
Yes.
Mrs. Race.
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes yes, the motion carries. Moving down to action items, number 7, Mr. Womack, item A.
So this is motion to approve up to a $5,000 budget for the purchase of fencing and materials for the installation of an off-leash dog area in Riggle Park. As indicated before, I thought it was an appropriate place for a park. For an off-leash dog area in a park. It sounds like maybe the mayor pro tem has some concerns about a basketball net. Of course, I don't see it getting used very often, and I think there are other places in the community that people do use the basketball nets. So the loss of this little, it's actually a very poor condition asphalt pad in the middle of Royal Park, I don't think would be terribly missed. And it is the goal of the city to have a brand new basketball net court installed in Morley Park in the future. Of course, that's in the future, not today. But maybe it's something we should listen to the mayor pro tem talk more about.
For discussion, Ms. Conley.
I just would like to know if we couldn't explore a different footprint. And maybe we can't. Maybe it's cost prohibitive because of the fencing, but that's a really big park.
Thank you. Ms. Powell, you had,
I was wondering, it's not a big basketball site.
It is in poor shape. But would there be money in this budget to replace it outside the basketball, outside the dog fence? With the just cement pad and throw up that basket up again?
Well, so yes and no. I don't know if it's appropriate to simply replace it the way it currently exists. Now, you guys will remember that just due to an error, the
We're losing you on audio.
amount of money to the park. So we have files and buttons.
Mike, we're struggling to hear you.
Technology just doesn't work for me today. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, can you hear me? Okay. So we do have an extra $5,000 that, we just simply have in the budget, and we can do obviously anything we want with it. I would not be opposed to having that be put towards the future development of a better basketball court. As I was indicating before, $30,000 to $40,000 to put in a nice full-size basketball court down in Morley Park, which I think would be highly utilized. So we could take the $5,000 that we currently have set aside for the dog park and put it towards that. I think simply replacing a little asphalt pad that exists in Riggle Park is a bad use of that resource. If that answers your question.
I just think it would be nice to at least put back what we have.
I do, like Pam says, I do hear people down there shooting baskets. And sometimes it's not the idea of playing a whole court. They just want to shoot and play
Right.
horse, whatever they do.
I think
Can we get at least a bid on this before we vote on it to get a pad down there?
Well, are you referring to simply replacing it in Riggle Park as well? Or do you mean for the nicer, newer basketball court that could be put into Morley?
No, I'm just thinking about putting the small pad back in Riggle because of the variety of people that are down there. If you're gonna have adults and little kids and big kids, they like to shoot some baskets.
yes.
And a big court is not necessary for
I
a
agree.
lot of what people do in regards with basketballs, because I watch them. And they 4 to 5 guys just throwing the ball in the basket. And it doesn't take a big court, but I would just hate, like Pam said, I'd hate to lose this because it's something that people do utilize.
I have a question.
Ms. Nixon?
How much is the savings using the existing fence in Riggle Park? How much money are we talking?
I would guess about $2,000.
How much would it cost to make the same size concrete pad that's there right now and move the basketball hoop to a place that isn't where it would be in the dog park?
I may, I'd like to ask a question of the DDA director. How many of those baskets, backboards and rims are still set up down there in the parking lot of Skinner Field? Okay, some of them were in poor condition. How much would it take to straighten them up a little bit? Possibly put some patch in the asphalt area out there.
It's a bad idea, only because that
play
area is
basketball.
and I've been out there and I've seen people try to shoot baskets. The parking lot just heaves terribly, which is one of the reasons I wanted to put a brand new, dedicated asphalt area for basketball playing that's not part of the parking lot. Because for whatever amount of money we could lay down and patch and use to pick up the baskets and whatever else, I just see it as a better proposition to put it towards something new that you're not going to be parking cars on. It's not going to get ruined in the same type of heating fashion. Of course, I think we were talking about this earlier today, that those nets have been up there for 15, 20 years. So it might just be a problem of age.
I'm not looking for this to be the resolve the issue. I'm looking.
I can't hear Jerry.
Mayor Pro Tem is he can't hear you
Muted.
either.
You muted.
He is not.
He was muted on my screen.
Not much of a basketball player. I see kids coming to lose. Seems like it works. A couple of them have gotten over the years, but that can be great.
Mr. Mullen.
Just part of the thought process.
Can I ask the question? I think for the discussion we're having on this and more information is needed, that possibly
part of
we
the
should
thought
table
process.
this.
Can I say something real quick before we do that? Just because I want to clarify. I think some people are thinking that the people that play basketball at Riggle Field might not go across 17 and play basketball at Skinner Field. You know what I mean? It might be just in little neighborhood kids where their family can still see them. That's what I'm thinking there might be an issue with. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I would like to piggyback off what Rose was saying, and I don't disagree. We need a full, nice, beautiful basketball court, but that isn't how that's used at Riggle Park. Riggle Park is where the kid who's babysitting little kids that are playing on the playground equipment shoots some hoops and sinks some baskets while they're watching the little kids. Or where dad goes and shoots some baskets while the little kids are going on the slide and the swings. And I think we need to preserve that if we can, because people use it that way. If we can't, then I guess I understand that, but it's not about a full game of full court basketball. It's about having that opportunity for adults and older teens to be able to have something to do while they're watching littler kids that use the park.
I think at this time I would make the motion to table this until the June meeting.
I support that motion.
Been supported. Any further discussion?
I do have-
Do I need to roll or consensus?
I do have one more comment.
Me too.
You have another
When do you,
discussion? Go ahead.
yeah, when do you plan on wanting to get this built and done? I
Well,
think,
the desire was to have this built and done in June as soon as possible, because of course I presented this to the public and to the city council 6 months ago. I've heard nothing about the basketball courts. I've heard nothing from the public. It's been in the newspaper. I've heard nothing from the public opposing it until tonight. So I'm a little shocked, to be honest. I was ready to go as soon as possible. The mayor and I have talked about putting the fence up and where to purchase the materials. So I guess if the board is not ready to go, then we'll table it, and I guess we'll see. It'll be built when it's built, if it's built.
I don't
There-
want to, I think that we should make a decision. It's been long enough.
I wasn't trying to suggest we need to table it. I just felt like maybe we could move the footprint. That was my question. This is the first I've seen the footprint with the aerial view that showed it taking up the basketball court. And I just thought we could move it to the back or move it to the side. I mean, it's a really big park. I'm not quite sure why it has to be in that exact spot, other than if it's just about we need to save the money for the fencing.
Have you been to a dog park like the Rockford Dog Park?
I have never been to a dog park.
Okay, it's huge, especially when you want to separate the big dogs with the little dogs. That's very important because I have a little dog. So I get what you're saying, but I feel like, and because, I plan on bringing my dog there. Molly
so do I.
likes to run and play with the dog, but maybe she'll want to try to throw a basket. But is it the basket court is literally not going to be there?
Correct. When I looked at the footprint of it in the thing today, it completely swallows up the little pad with the basketball court. And I just didn't know. I mean, could we flip it to the other side of the park? I mean, it's a big park. I walk around it all the time because I live across the street.
Yeah, it's a big park.
If we couldn't flip it to the other side, we couldn't flip it along the back because we don't want it to go completely up against the creek. I get it. And it's a little piece of concrete with the basketball hoop.
Madam
Mayor.
Chair, if I could,
Nixon's online.
Mr. Mayor, who would you like to speak next?
Go ahead, Mr. Womack.
So, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, one of the reasons that we decided to increase the size of the dog park to the south towards the street, which is what's causing it to envelop the basketball court area, is because we wanted to preserve the green space that currently exists on the northwest corner of the park for people who may wish to kick a soccer ball around, throw a
Sure.
football around, that kind of thing. And so if we were to shift the plan to shrink it north-south, to preserve the size, we would have to extend it east-west, which I think would swallow up that green area. That's part of the reasoning why we did that.
I think more kids can kick a ball and run around than kids shooting baskets. Like my daughter will try to shoot a basket, but I know that she'd probably want to kick a ball too,
Yeah, mine does both.
Okay.
If we can't move the footprint, we can't move the footprint. I mean, it was a question.
Mr. Mayor, I believe the motion on the table is to table this.
Right now, we have a motion on the floor to table that until the June meeting. I would withdraw my motion if their council wishes to proceed on this.
If I may, I would very much like to proceed on this. I think that we should at the very least buy the materials. This motion that we have to me is not saying where the footprint will be necessarily, only that we should move forward on this. The overwhelming support that I have gotten from the community has been, yes, we would like a dog park. Perhaps we find it prudent in the future to not envelop the basketball court and to spend the extra $2,000 on fencing, which to me is what this is really about. But I would at least like to get the materials purchased so that we can go forward on this.
I agree.
I agree. I'm not opposed to the dog park. I just wanted to consider a different footprint.
Okay, on that note, I will withdraw my motion. Mrs. Atchison withdrew her second, so what's the will of the council on this?
I would like to make a motion to approve the $5,000 in funding for purchases for materials to build the dog park.
I will second that.
We do have a discussion from Rose Powell.
I was just hoping we could consider putting in another basketball pad down there and getting a bid on it at the very least.
Well, I think at this point, if council wants to, at the very least, move forward with funding, we can discuss internally and administratively how we may wish to situate this park. And of course, you know, I don't want to ramrod this over any of the citizens living there, which is one of the reasons we put it in the newspaper and public notice out to the members of the public. Is we do want to make sure that while this area is being utilized for people to use for a dog park, we also want to minimize any kind of impact on the people who live in that area. So I don't personally think it's going to see a huge impact in traffic. For the people who live or have been to the dog park in Rockford, there's sadly very few times I've been there, there's been more than 2 or 3 cars. So I personally don't think it'll be that much of a traffic issue. But as far as moving forward, I'd like to see it approved, and then we can discuss maybe the footprint, maybe moving the basketball pad, maybe moving that pad outside of where the fence line is going to be. I think there's a number of options we can discuss internally administratively.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the purchase of the dog park materials and fencing for Regal Park. Any further discussion before I call the roll vote? Mrs. Atchison,
Yes.
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
Mrs. Nixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Powell,
Yes.
Mrs. Race,
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes yes, the motion carries. Moving on to B, Mr. Ru- Go ahead, yes.
I understand your concerns, sir. I understand also that you said you weren't against the park. Just didn't want your backyard. We would probably find that most any place we would. Hopefully that can be controlled where it's
Please
not
do contact me.
as offensive to you as what you're fearing it's going to be.
Okay.
We did ask people whether they wanted it in North Park or Regal Park, and it was overwhelmingly in favor of Regal Park.
I live right there where behind your street too.
I live right across.
She lives on the corner. So, thank you. Moving on to item B. Item B, Mr. Womack, would you recite the motion?
I believe, Madam Clerk, if you want to correct me, this is the motion to authorize the city manager to approve and sign the easement agreement. No, the door is simply locked behind.
Could you repeat your motion over, please?
I believe it's a motion to authorize the city manager to approve and sign the easement agreement that would cross over the city's property, which will become the fire station parking lot for the new fire station. I do apologize to council. This came to me today. I didn't have a whole lot of time to forward it along. I did email to council the second I got it.
Yeah,
But
I saw it.
It's no surprise to anybody. We've discussed this dozens of times that this is going to happen.
knew it was coming.
I did forward this on to our engineers to make sure that the easement language did meet up with our expectations and it would not interfere with the building itself. So this would entirely apply to the parking lot area to the south of the building. And of course, as new construction, I don't anticipate it would cause any problems anyways, at least not for the next 15 to 20 years. So I'm simply asking for the authority to sign the documents and authorize the easement.
What's the will of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion to authorize the city manager to sign the documents for the easement for the fire station.
Second,
Mrs. Nixon seconded. It's been moved and seconded to approve the manager signing for the drain easement for the fire station. At this time, I'll do a roll call unless there's a discussion. Hearing none. Ms. Atkinson,
Yes.
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Groves,
Yes.
Mrs. Nixon,
yes.
Mrs. Powell,
Yes.
Mrs. Reyes.
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes yes, the motion carries. Any other action to be brought before the council at this time?
Not this time, but we do have a discussion item.
Hearing none. Moving on to catch up with my paperwork. Goodness. I messed up. Okay, Mr. Womack.
Just give me 1 second. Let me shift gears here. I did put together a memo regarding this next discussion item, which will help me lead discussion on it.
Okay, we're in discussion item A.
So,
Everyone do their homework.
So this is obviously a very complicated discussion item, and we've been discussing this since, what, November of 2018?
Yeah, forever.
This is no surprise to anybody. Again, we've done our absolute best to make sure this has been in the paper multiple times. It's been on our website, it's been in our agendas, it's been in our packets. If you don't know what we're talking about, then you have not been paying attention. We are getting down to the nitty gritty. We have, I think, an excellent draft ordinance, but in discussions with the city attorney, with the planning commission, with the various council members, staff, and members of the public, at the public forums that we held, I believe that there are some recommendations that I'd like to make for change to the zoning ordinance aspect. The regulatory ordinance, there's not a whole lot to it to discuss. It's deals mostly with the licensing side of it, which, you know, is really internal to staff. So I don't see that as generating much, if any, discussion at all. Of course, if council wants to discuss it, I'd be happy to hear feedback, but the majority of what we need to discuss is within the zoning ordinance. I did try to simplify the recommendations for change to 14 questions, which I forwarded to council, I believe, a week or two ago, also to the planning commission. The planning commission members did discuss those 14 questions at their meeting 2 days ago. They have not made a formal recommendation to the city council, which is required by law, which is one of the reasons that we moved this from action to discussion. My hope is that after the discussion with council today, with the informal votes that were taken by the planning commission members, that I can walk away having a good idea of what the majority vote will be at the next June meeting of city council. I will then take that information back to the city attorney. We will redraft the ordinance to meet those changes, assuming that we can come to a conclusion today. And that we will then have the option to vote to approve at the June meeting. So, Mr. Mayor, would you like me simply to proceed with the 14 questions, or do we want to maybe start with open discussion by council? And then we can go over the 14 questions. How would, I guess, the board like to proceed?
For the essence of time, I think everyone should have done their homework to read over the last packet from the zoning or the planning commission put out. There was a lot of work there and discussion back and forth, so I would ask on question 1, if everybody agrees with the vote of the planning commission. If not, could you state your business on that and keep it as brief as possible? Mr. Womack will read the questions and then basically give what the planning commission come up with. And then if any counselor wishes to speak, you may. How's that? And keep our comments to a minimum.
Sounds good to me. I'll try to be as brief as possible, but of course, this is a very complex topic, and there's a lot of different ways to look at it.
Yep.
And again, I know it's very complex, so if anyone has any questions, I will do my best to answer them. So, the question number 1 was, should the city add the R3 zoning district to the 500-foot exclusionary zone? So the original thinking was that a 500-foot exclusion zone for growers, processors, and access growers would
Mike, your feed stopped.
businesses from operating in the downtown zoning district, industrial zoning district. Madam Clerk, am I authorized to share my screen?
Yes, you should be.
Give me 1 second, and I will.
As a note, the R3 district is basically from Pine Street north.
So R3 does exist in a couple of different ways. You know what? I can't do it because I'm on 2 computers right now. I apologize. But the zoning map of the city is available on the city's website. It's located under important documents. It's the 3rd one down, the 2020 zoning map. But there are a couple of patches of R3 in the city, but at the time when I was coming up with this ordinance, there was nothing that the R3 added that the R1, R2, and mixed use didn't already do for that downtown industrial district. However, after thinking about it, R3 does impact the 425 area. So the Brook nursing home and nursing facility is R3. So if we were to add this district to the 500-foot exclusionary zone, you would be saving and preserving the area around the Brook for non-marijuana businesses. And the reason that's important is because I have been approached by developers who might want to put multifamily residential in that area.
Which fits with our master plan as a thing we need more of.
Correct. So I would recommend that we make that change,
and that is the recommendation of the planning commission, correct?
and the council, the planning commission did recommend that change unanimously 7-0.
Okay. No
Do you want a
questions
straw
on-
poll, Mr. Mayor, on each of these as we go?
What?
Do you want a straw poll on each of these as we go?
I think we'll just leave our comments unless we don't agree with the planning commission. If you disagree with what the planning commission has to say, then we would like to hear input. If you all agree with what the planning commission has put out, we'll just move on. Okay, sounds like we'll go to number 2.
Number 2, should the city allow marijuana retailers to operate in the B2 district? So under the current draft of the ordinance, marijuana retailers are permitted in the B2 district. This would be the downtown district from Ash Street up to, I believe, Maple Street. And the planning commission recommended that we continue that at 6 votes to 1.
Comment?
Mr. Gross?
Mine is null.
Hmm?
My comment is null. They said yes, I said no.
Any other comments, noes or yays?
I agree with the planning commission.
Okay. Hearing no others, so I guess everyone else is yes.
I have Mike repeat that one, please? My audio is really terrible.
Could you repeat that again, Ms. Nixon?
Could I have Mike repeat that certain proposal? I had difficulty hearing.
Do I
Mike-
need a third computer to get the audio working correct?
Or on the phone?
Okay, Ms. Nixon, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay. So the planning commission voted 6-1 to allow marijuana retailers to operate in the B2 district. Thus far, council has indicated, the mayor pro tem has indicated that she agrees, and Mr. Gross has indicated he opposes.
I would agree with the recommendation. Thank you.
What?
She agrees with the recommendation. Now,
Okay,
Of the
thank-
planning commission.
excuse me, I thought we were only gonna comment if we didn't agree with what they did, right?
Right.
Okay. I'll make sure. You know.
Okay, any other comments on 2? We'll move to 3.
So number 3 is, should the city allow marijuana retailers to operate in the B3 district? B3 district being the area from Maple Street north to 18 Mile Road. Now, if you look at the zoning map, there are a couple other areas which are designated as B3. But those areas seem to be prohibited from hosting marijuana businesses due to their closeness to the public school system. So I would believe that this would only be discussing the areas from Maple Street to 18 Mile Road. It is currently permitted in the current draft, and the planning commission did recommend this 6-1.
I was gonna say, to clarify, that's not retail, that's micro business, right?
If this is question number 3, no, it is retail businesses, retailers in the B3 district.
Okay, I might be confused then.
Any questions or concerns on 3? Yes or no from anyone, or no?
No.
Okay, one more. No problem. Okay, moving on to item 4.
Number 4 is, should the city allow marijuana retailers to operate in the HC district? So the HC district is the area out by the McDonald's, by the 131, the 425 area, to have multiple names, I guess. Currently, under the current draft, those businesses, the retail businesses, are not permitted in the HC district. Now, there are a number of questions further along that would kind of limit what type or how retailers would be permitted. So this is kind of a complicated question because, of course, maybe they should have been all asked together. But let's see, number 4 was a split vote. The planning commission voted 4 in favor, 3 opposed.
That would be a standalone retailer, no processing.
Yep, so for right now, I would say that this means standalone retailers in the HC district.
I'm
How
probably
this
opposed
will-
to that.
How many yeses do
I
we
am
have?
opposed to a standalone retailer as well in the H.
In the planning commission?
No.
Carol, you want to take a voice vote?
I'll take a straw vote on this one because it's closed. Ms. Atkinson,
Yeah.
Mrs. Conley,
No,
Mr. Gross,
No.
Mrs. Nixon,
No,
Mrs. Powell.
Not straight up, just retail.
Correct.
No.
Mrs. Race
No,
and Mr. Hall votes yes, so we would say no to that. We have a 5-2 for the manager.
Yep, and as I indicated before, there's some later questions that will make a little bit more sense. So number 5 then, Should the city allow marijuana micro businesses to operate in the B3 district? This is question number 5. It is currently permitted under the draft ordinance, and the planning commission voted 5-2 in favor, yes.
I would disagree with.
So micro business would be a business that has to grow, process, and sell at retail in one location, in one building, but a maximum of 150 plants. It would be similar to or akin to a microbrewery, but for marijuana.
Okay. This was a 5-2. Any dissensions on this? Any no's?
I would say no.
No.
Okay. Any other no's?
No.
Who was that? Any other no's? Who was that?
Maybe we should take a vote. Mr. Alpha.
I'll take a roll call straw poll on this. Mrs. Atchison,
Yes.
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Groves, we have yours. Mrs. Nixon,
No.
Mrs. Powell,
Yes.
Mrs. Race,
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes no. So we're a 4-3. Mr. Womack? 4 for yes, 3 for no.
Number 6, should the city allow marijuana micro businesses to operate in the HC district? The planning commission recommended 6-1 against no.
This one was defeated by the planning commission, so I would ask if there's any of the council members that would vote yes. Any
I would-
other persons wishing to vote yes?
I could be swayed.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mrs. Brace had her hand up. Mrs. Brace had her
Who
hand
did?
up.
We had it up. That's more of a yes.
Okay.
And I'm a yes. I'm a yes also. I'm sort of on the fence, but we'll go with yes.
I would say yes.
Okay, if we get confusion, so from now on, I'm gonna do just a roll call. Mrs. Atchison,
Yes.
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Gross,
No.
Mrs. Nixon,
No.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mrs. Race,
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes yes. So it would be a 5-2, Mr. Womack.
Okay, so as indicated, for the next 2 questions, I want everybody to keep in mind that the current draft prohibits marijuana businesses from co-locating with any type of residential use on the same property. So question number 7 is, should the city I have an old copy here. Should the city prohibit marijuana businesses from sharing a property line with a single-family residential primary use in the B3 district? So in other words, would we want to prohibit marijuana businesses from being next door to any single-family residential use in the B3 district? Question number 7, unanimous 7 yes, no 0.
Any questions on item 7 on that?
Yeah, that's
Correct. So the next question deals with all districts.
Hearing none, we'll move on to 8.
So the same question, but this would apply to all zoning districts. And of course, now, a couple weeks later, I realize that maybe I asked that in a funny way. I did put together a memo today, which I, again, was only able to send out a couple hours before your meeting, showing you where this would affect various properties throughout the community. So it does obviously affect some commercial buildings that would be prohibited if we were to make this change. But I think it's probably an appropriate change to make. I just put myself into the place of somebody who owns a single-family residential home, and I'm not sure I'd want to be next to a marijuana business of any kind. But on the other hand, people who have bought a home that already are next to a operating business, you know, they kind of know what existed there when they bought the house. So it's kind of one of those, one or the others. It's a policy decision of the council to make.
Okay, the planning commission unanimously voted yes, that the city should prohibit. Any questions or no's or yeses?
I agree with the planning commission.
Any other nays? Any other persons wishing to say no?
Mr. Mayor, was there one that had opposed that?
Ms. Powell?
Thank you.
Okay, we have 1 nay and 6 yeas, so we'll move on to number 9.
The question is, should the city allow marijuana retailers to co-locate on the same property as a grower, processor, excess grower in the AHC district? This one surprised me with the planning commission. They voted 6 no's, 1 yes. So, you know, this is obviously one of those complicated questions that if we're going to allow growers, processors, and excess growers in the AHC district, do we want to allow them to also have a retail store? Now, the marijuana businesses are going to want that. And I think if we allow growers and processors to exist in the AHC district, that's a bit of an industrial use. And we can kind of blunt that by allowing them to also have a retail store attached. Now, there is a later question that would require that be the case for growing and processing. But I guess this is a permissive. So I don't know how council wants to address it. They want to address this as a permissive and they want to address the required later on. But the planning commission recommended no.
Any questions?
I would be in favor of allowing it.
Same.
Okay, Mrs. Powell has a question.
So it's just simply retail marijuana detached grower building or business.
Correct. Now, this question is offering them the opportunity to do that if the business would like. Later on, we have a separate question which would require that. And I'll explain that a little bit more when we get to that question.
I would be in favor of allowing.
So Mr. Hall, I've counted 3 who indicated their preference for allowing. You might want to take a vote.
Okay, is what this would do is it would allow them, but we have a question on down that would require them to. So just so you know, I'll do a straw vote on this. Mrs. Atkinson,
Yeah.
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Groves,
Oh, no.
Mrs. Nixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Powell, Mrs. Race,
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes no. Okay, it carries a 5-2 for the council's straw poll. So moving on to 10.
So number 10, the question is, should the city increase from 100 feet to 500 feet the separation distance between micro businesses in the I-1 district from all properties in the R1, R2, and mixed-use districts, which would effectively remove micro businesses from the downtown industrial zone? So kind of using a similar logic to the growers and processors in the downtown industrial zone. if we increase this from 100 to 500 feet, micro businesses cannot locate in that downtown industrial zone. Now, again, I apologize, I didn't have this ready for the agenda, but I did identify at least 2 locations in the downtown industrial zone that could possibly host a micro business meeting this distance separation requirement. A policy consideration for the council and the planning commission to consider is that a micro business would be a retail store, and obviously they'd be growing as well. And this downtown industrial district fronts upon the White Pine Trail. So if the council wants to pursue that marijuana businesses along or being near to the White Pine Trail, they would want to approve this and increase that amount. Unfortunately, the planning commission voted 3 for, 3 against, and 1 abstention.
For the 100 or the 500?
I believe their vote was, well, I mean, obviously they didn't give us any guidance because of 3 for and 3 against, but they deadlocked on whether to increase it from 100 to 500.
I see. Okay, moving on to 10. The purpose would be to expand it to 500 feet or the remaining 100 feet in the I-1 or the R1, R2 in mixed use. I'll do any questions before I call the vote? Hearing none. Miss Atkinson,
No.
Miss Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
Miss Nixon,
So to be clear, this is whether or not to expand it 500 feet.
correct.
I would vote no.
Miss Powell,
No.
Mrs. Race,
Yes.
all votes no. 3 in favor, 4 against.
That's
So,
a hard
number
one.
11. Should the city exclude growers and processors from the HC district altogether? So, and council has heard me repeat this many times, but there are a number of buildings out there that might be suited for growing and processing. And I believe that there are people and businesses who want to grow and process out in that district. But as I indicated before, growing and processing is a bit of an industrial use property, which might be kind of violative of the commercial and retail atmosphere that exists out there. But the next 3 questions following this one would be, if you were to allow it, here are some ways where we could kind of force it to remain retail or commercial. But obviously, if council is opposed to growing and processing all of this question, then I don't know if the next 3 questions are necessary to explore.
Okay. Everybody on item 11.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I forgot to tell you what the planning commission did because my other computer kicked me out. Darn technology. Mr. Hall, do you have the vote of the planning commission or?
4 yes, 5 no. Should the city exclude growers and processors in the HC district? So I'll have a roll or a straw poll vote. Ms. Atchison,
No. No.
Mrs. Conley,
To clarify, you're asking,
to exclude.
do I believe we should exclude? I'm struggling with the wording of the question.
Yeah, so the current draft allows for growers and processors to operate in the HC district. The question is, do you want to exclude them from the
No.
HC district?
Mr. Gross. Yes. Mrs. Nixon,
Yes.
No.
Mrs. Powell,
No.
Trick question. Mrs. Race,
No.
Mr. Hall, no. Okay, that was 6-1. Moving on to item 12.
Now that I have my computer back, I can tell you that the planning commission voted 6 yes and 1 no. The question is, if we allow growers and processors to operate in the HC district, should we then also require that they have a retail storefront co-locate with that grower processor? The logic here is that growers and processing is an industrial use of property. And I don't think the planning commission wanted to simply remove buildings from the public sphere. In other words, to allow a purely industrial use of property in the HC district. So they've indicated that if we allow growers and processors to operate, that we should require them to also have a retail store so that people would still be able to go into those buildings. This also probably would have the effect of limiting the number of growers and processors that would locate in that district.
Okay, this would require a grower and processor to have a storefront at that location.
Correct.
Any questions before I do the straw poll?
Can I ask what the reasoning of the planning commission was on this?
Yes. You want to know what the reasoning, from what I recall, it was they did not want a big box store to come in and take over, for instance,
Right.
one of the buildings out there and monopolize it for a growing processing operation only.
So that was part of it.
Yeah.
Part of it, of course, we'll address it again in another question. But I think it was partially, people like be able to go in and they don't like buildings to exist that they can't go into, especially in the commercial retail zone of the city. Obviously, I can't walk into your house in a residential district. But if you have a building that exists next to a Tractor Supply and the Family Farm and Home and a dollar store and all these things that you can walk into, I think the Planning Commission was saying, if you're going to be able to grow and process out there, which is something that we are allowing you to do, you don't then also just get to close to the public. That we would require
Okay.
you be open to the
So
public.
businesses like that would then be excluded to industrial. If you're
If you're
thinking.
only a grower processor and you did not want to also have a retail store, then yes, you would be prohibited from the HC district, but you would still be allowed to operate in the industrial district.
Okay. That makes sense to me. I understand that.
Okay. I'll do a straw poll vote again. Mrs. Atkinson,
Yes.
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Gross.
Question for me. I mean, pretty obvious what I'd be able so. No.
Mrs. Nixon,
I would vote to not require retail storefront.
to require them to have a storefront, retail sale.
No, I would not require a retail storefront.
So she's no.
She's a no.
We know.
Yes.
Mrs. Race,
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes yes.
Okay.
5-1.
Question number 13
Moving
would
on.
be, if we allow growers and processors to operate in the HC district, should we also require that the building be less than 20,000 square feet? So the original question that was sent out to the city council and the planning commission was 40,000 square feet. The planning commission changed that to 20,000 square feet. They also indicated that what they meant was the entire property, so that you couldn't put up 4 buildings of 20,000 square feet each. And so we effectively have 80,000 square feet. They also indicated that whether you were growing, processing, or retailing, that all those activities would count towards the 20,000 square feet. So, of course, when it comes to actually drafting the language of the ordinance, we'll have some work cut out for us. But I think the thing is, as Mr. Hall was indicating previously, the Planning Commission didn't want there to be the Walmart of marijuana, the Costco of marijuana located in Cedar Springs, that we weren't necessarily opposed to allowing that type of activity, but that we didn't want it to be the monolithic, massive building that it could be. So if they wanted to have a monolithic building, they could do it in the industrial section of the town.
Correct.
So the Planning Commission did vote in favor 7-0 unanimously, yes.
Just as a reference, for size, farm and fleet building is too large. It's like 36,000 square feet.
The family farm building is approximately 65,000 square feet. The tractor supply is approximately 45,000 square feet. The Save-A-Lot is about 19,000 square feet. The fireworks building, I think, was 7,000 or 8,000 square feet.
It was too small.
Yeah.
So just to give you a size and perspective. Okay, I'll do another straw poll vote. Mrs. Atchison,
Yes.
Mrs. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Gross. Yes. Mrs. Nixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Powell,
Yes.
Mrs. Race, Mrs. Race,
This is for 20,000 square foot or 40,000?
20.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, that was
Mr. Hall votes
confusing.
yes. We have a unanimous with the Planning Commission.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, you indicated it was confusing. Are you under the belief that anybody was voting for 40? And if so, would
No,
you like
I was confirming that when I initially read it, it didn't seem like it was the same as what the Planning Commission was saying.
Oh, yes. It was printed as 20, the question.
Mr. Hall, are you confident that the vote reflects 20?
I'm sure everyone
Wait.
understand that the vote was for
Yes.
20,000 square feet.
Yes.
Any concerns or questions on this after we voted?
And I
it'll
appreciate
be
the mayor
20.
explaining some other businesses and the sizes that they are for clarity.
Thank you.
That was helpful.
So the final question, this was actually added to it by one of the board members. This was not me. But I think it's an interesting question because I think it balances some of the concerns that we've had regarding retail businesses and allowing them in the HC district versus forcing them to be in the B3 district. The question was, should we prohibit standalone marijuana retailers to operate in the HC district? In other words, the only way you would be allowed to operate a retailer was if it was to co-locate with a grower or processor in the HC district. And I think the logic from the Planning Commission, because they voted unanimously 7 in favor of this, was that retailers are fairly simple to open, and that we didn't want the HC district to be overrun by 15 retailers, and that it would also encourage retail businesses to come to the downtown district if they wanted to operate as a standalone business. So I know that one's a little confusing. Obviously, if anyone has any questions about how that is phrased or would operate, I'd be happy to hear them before a vote.
What was the position of the Planning Commission?
The Planning Commission voted 7-0 yes in favor.
Okay.
Basically, it would require a standalone retailer to go to the downtown business or the B3, but it would be allowed in the HC if they were a grower processor on the same premises. Everybody understand that? All right, a straw poll. Ms. Atchison,
No.
Mrs. Conley,
I agree with the planning commission.
that would be a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Groves?
Yes.
Yes. Mrs. Dixon?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mrs. Race?
Yes.
Mr. Hall votes yes. At that, there comes to the conclusion of our homework this evening on the marijuana ordinance. Mr. Womack will compile all this, and I'm sure we'll see it in the new draft.
Not to extend the team that was discussing this, but I do think it's important and appropriate to offer to the city council at this time the ability to, I guess, propose any other changes that they might like to see to the zoning ordinance. Because even though we've gone over this multiple times and the planning commission's reviewed it,
Right.
I don't know if there's anything else that the city council members might have on their minds specifically regarding the zoning that they might like to address at this time prior to a final draft being written.
I would like to see any comments or changes, put them in writing and submitting to the manager. That way we have them in black and white, and then we can get them in our packet and review them before we act on this again. How's that?
That's fine. My only concern is if it's something that's potentially controversial, we may be
Understand.
extending this from June to July.
Understand. Ms. Atchison has a question. Go ahead.
They said yes to having not allowing the retail store in HC without the grower and processing, but there still could be a grower and a processor without a retail store in the industrial or other
Correct.
areas, correct? Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Not shutting them out, we're just requiring them if they're to be on Main Street, if they're
Yep.
standalone. But out in the highway district, HC, they must be a grower processor and have a retail. Any other questions on this quiz tonight that we would like to speak to?
I would just like to say thank you very much to the planning commission. They did a great deal of heavy lifting on this in their discussion that was very helpful to me.
Yes, there was a lot of hard work there, a lot of good open discussion. Hearing no other items on the discussion, Mr. Womack? We have no communications?
That I'm aware of.
Department reports, Mr. Womack.
Well, I say it just about every time. The agenda in the packet is my communication. I am also thankful for the planning commission. They put some good work into this on Tuesday, and of course to the council members as well. This is very difficult policy decision making. A lot of the stuff we do is pretty clear cut. This is not. So thank you for that. We've had a lot of discussion, both the council and staff, about how to proceed forward with COVID-19. City Hall has been closed to the public since, I believe, March 16th or 18th. It's been quite some time now. City Hall staff has been working consistently and constantly since then. Even though we're closed to the public, we are continuing to work. Of course, you guys know I'm a bit of a workaholic. I'm at City Hall just about every single day. But staff has been working both at City Hall and remotely, and I appreciate all the work that they've been doing. The governor's current quarantine extends, I believe, until May 28th, which is another 2 weeks from today. But I will tell you, and I don't mean this politically in any way, I am very concerned about the continued and ongoing spread of COVID-19, especially to more remote and rural areas, which until this time have been little affected, including Cedar Springs, even though we did have an initial onset at one of our nursing facilities early on. I am a little afraid that the loosening of some of these restrictions will cause that disease to flare up again, or as a second wave. And so I take this very, very seriously. I am doing my absolute best to protect both the boards and my staff, and we will be doing the best we can to open again to the public in such a way that will keep my staff and the board safe from the disease. We've not made any hard decisions about that. We will be looking at the available evidence leading right up to May 28th or any further extensions. And we will hopefully be open soon, along with the rest of the world. But this is very serious, very dangerous stuff. During this meeting, I was informed that one of my brother's childhood friends just recently died, 35 years old. I don't know if it was related to COVID-19, but I don't want people dying from COVID-19 or any other reason. So please, please, please take these things seriously. Wear your mask in public, practice social distancing, and hopefully we'll all get through this together.
Thank you. Any questions of the manager at this time? Department of Public Works, Mr. LaRoche.
Anybody have any questions?
Anybody have any questions of Mr. LaRoche on his department report?
Water treatment, people doing okay?
We have no police representation tonight. Our fire chief is here this evening. Any questions of Chief Frazier?
I can echo Mr. Womack's concerns about opening things too soon. Dealing with what we deal with in the public, it scares the living bejeebers out of me that people are ignoring the executive orders and doing pretty much whatever they want without proper protection, and I can see this coming back to the vengeance. For those that have any experience, anybody being at the nursing home and stuff, that it's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. And like I said, it scares me that we're gonna open up too soon and too quick. Stay home, stay safe, wear your PPE, and we can struggle through this and go on with life. We will get through this.
Yes.
It takes all of us, like a village to raise a child. It's gonna take a lot of us to conquer this virus. Other than that, I'd like to thank Darla for the work on the budget. Thank the city council for all of their work and input, and especially the city manager and everybody involved in the new fire station. It looks like we're making some progress. The out there with a crane the other day digging holes in my backyard.
We're getting there.
I got a swimming pool now due to the rain today. I hope the lady doesn't see that, so she'll tackle that. I don't have anything much.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions of Chief Frazier? Madam Clerk.
You guys have my attached report. If you have questions, feel free to ask. I will let you know that I did receive news this week that Cedar Springs Public Schools did put their millage request or bond proposal on the August ballot. So you will see that come August. Chandel and I will be working closely to begin preparation for the August election. At this time, there's a lot of unknowns what may be happening during that time. But as things change and progress, we'll be sure to keep everyone up to date on that.
Thank you. That will be a new experience, the August election. Thank you. Mrs. Falcon, any questions or concerns of our finance director? Budget. Hearing none, code enforcement been busy?
You know, she is doing a very tough and thankless job. And I've had people complain to me that, well, now is not the time to address zoning concerns or code enforcement. I'll tell you, I find fault in that. As the council knows, we are very rare that we actually write tickets of any kind, because we don't want to write tickets. We want people simply to have nice looking homes that follow the rules and requirements. So she continues to do her job. We haven't written any tickets during this time. We simply are asking people to follow the rules and have nice homes.
The building inspections, I did secure my building permit for my addition on my garage. I was told it was not critical, so I couldn't get the cement poured, but if I grow marijuana, I could get it poured right away. So I have to wait. We don't have an ordinance.
Awesome.
Boards and commission meetings. Hearing none. Moving on to council comments. Ms. Atchison.
Thank everybody for getting all these meetings set up. I somehow took myself off of it, I think, but,
Oh, you're on.
oh, good. It's getting better. I just can't see anybody else. I don't know if I'll ever get good at it, but you guys are getting really good. Thank you.
All learning curve. Mrs. Conley.
Thanks to everyone, particularly the Planning Commission, for doing so much homework. I feel like we're almost across the finish line with this marijuana zoning and regulations. It's been very complicated and everybody has put in a lot of work. So thank you to all my fellow council people and the city manager and the clerk and the Planning Commission and our attorney and everybody that's had to come together to make this so that we could make a workable plan for our community.
Thank you. Mr. Gross.
I too appreciate all the work that's gone into everything. I may or may not agree. It's not from the lack of not trying to determine and gather enough information to make a good sound judgment.
Mrs.
Anyway,
Nixon.
with that, that's enough said for now.
Do we have Mrs. Nixon on yet?
I'm sorry, my connection is in and out. Just briefly, thank you to all members of our government who are continuing to make this work, even when the rest of the world has had to slow down. And thank you to everyone who has stayed home to slow the spread of COVID-19. I am a nurse and I've been blessed that so far it's been manageable at work. And I am deeply grateful that we have not reached Detroit levels. And I thank you to everyone who has stayed home. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nixon. Ms. Powell.
Like they say, when you've got your health, you've got everything, and that's a fact. And the other thing I wanted to tell you, I called the commander of the American Legion next door to find out what their plans were for Memorial Day, and he said they were not going to do any ceremonies this year. And one of the flags and going around to the different cemeteries, he said they couldn't do that, but there's a slight possibility that they would get the name plates along the avenue. So that's all I got out of that. But anyway, thank you everybody and stay well.
Mrs. Ray.
I can piggyback on the staying home, staying safe. I had to run out one time in the last, I don't even know how many weeks. And I was surprised at how many people that still just don't care. And there's so many other people that are just home following the rules. And there's, my sister's a nurse, Molly's a nurse. You know, and that's scary. That's your family out there too. So we just want to make sure we don't want to rush it. Everyone wants to get back to normal, but we all have to face that there's just not a normal, and who knows if it'll ever be. So another thing is, I'm very glad that these 14 questions have been gone through. I've taken a lot of time to think about this. I went into the PC meeting on Tuesday because I was really interested to know what they thought about this. So I know it's a lot of work. The city manager has done a fantastic job as always, to make this easier for us. But definitely a good step ahead for all of us.
Thank you. I would like to echo a lot of the people's comments tonight, the council members. There's been a lot of work into this going forward. We're still moving forward even with this COVID-19. I think today and times, this COVID-19 will change the community, how we operate, how we do anything in the future, and especially when the stay-at-home order is lifted the 28th. There are so many people out there that are ignoring it, and it's putting everyone's health in jeopardy, including themselves. Please use common sense, stay home, wear a mask, use your hand sanitizers, wash your hands, and be safe. We want to see you all next year for the ribbon cutting on Chief Frazier's new building. So be safe, and thank you one and all for everything. And if there any other business to be brought before this council at this time? Thank you. This is a new age for us on our Zoom meetings. The public that is listening in, please be patient with us. This is all new territory for everybody, and we do not intend to hide this from anybody. So let us know your comments and concerns, and thank you one and all for being here this evening. We stand adjourned. Okay, folks, turn your computers off.
Madam Pro Tem,
Yes.
can you hear me?